Happy Friday. We are at chapter 8 today. You, Will said. It was you. You stole it. You really stole it. No, I didn't, I said. He ignored me. But how? How did you do it? I told you I didn't do it. How could I? Close the door, Will, or they'll hear us. I don't mind if they hear us. He could not take his eyes off the orb. What did you do it for? I never did it, I whispered. Honest, I didn't. Then how come you're standing there holding it as if you never took it? He reached out and touched it. Is that really it? He asked. Is that really the one? I suppose so, I said. Well, somebody stole it, didn't they? I had nothing to say. I mean, I didn't get here on its own, did it, Bess? So if you didn't steal it, who did? I can't tell you, I said. Not yet. And even if I could, you wouldn't believe me. You just say I was making it all up. Will looked at me for a moment, and then suddenly he leaned forward and grabbed the orb out of my hands. If you won't tell me right now what's going on, he said, I'll take this next door and show them. I will, Bess. Honest, I will. There's been things going on around here that I don't understand, and you're going to tell me. For instance, I don't know how that letter and that bottle I found just disappeared. You said you'd tell me one day, and you still haven't. 1 minute they were there, and the next they weren't, and that's not natural. Then you go running off to London for no good reason, and now this. Something's going on, and I want to know what it is. Now, are you going to tell me or not? I would if I could, I said, but I promised. I promised who? A friend of mine. What friend? I shook my head. Right then, and he turned away from me. Suddenly the door shut in front of him, and Sir Walter Raleigh was standing there, his cane levelled at Will's chest. There was no doubt that Will could see him. You only had to see the look on Will's face. Master Will, no further. Will backed away towards me. Who is it? His voice was barely audible. Who's that man? Cousin Bess, will you not present me to your brother, and make haste to take the bauble from him, for I fear he may drop it. I took the orb from Will's trembling hands. This is Sir Walter Raleigh, I said. He's the friend I was telling you about. He's one of our ancestors, remember? Will was swallowing hard. It's all right, he said. He won't hurt. Honest, he won't. But he's dead, said Will, pushing me forward and holding me like a shield between himself and my friend Walter. He's in the history books, he whispered. He's dead. He's been dead for ages. 370 years this very year, said Walter, lowering his cane and smiling broadly. Be not afeard of me, Master Will. I bear you no ill will. I come to help you, not to harm you. Then he's a ghost, said Will. He's a real-life ghost. Real, but unfortunately not live, cousin, said Walter. I am, as you say, a spirit being, visible only to those I wish to see me. Until now only, your sister has seen me, and I had promised never to show myself to anyone else. Walter looked at me and shrugged his shoulders. I had no choice, chick. You understand that, do you not? I had to stop your impetuous brother. I could not allow my plan to be discovered. It would have been the end of it. Shall I tell him all, dear cousin? I nodded. Your sister Bess brought me here from the Tower many long weeks ago, and I lived amongst you all that time, though you did not know it. I know you all better than you can imagine, Master Will. You're indeed my family, and I've come to love you as such. The letter, Will whispered, and his hands gripping my shoulder so hard it hurt. It was him that wrote it then, wasn't it? He's W.R. He's Walter Raleigh. Aye, I did that, cousin, Walter sighed, and almost carelessly left it lying on the table for you to find it. And you did not dream it, Master Will. It was I that took the letter away and hid it whilst you were outside the door. And the bottle? Will asked. That was the elixir, I said. The what? Said Will. The medicine, I explained. Walter made it down in your chemistry lab, in the cellar. I told you it wasn't me messing about down there, didn't I? It was Walter. He saved her life, Will. He gave me the elixir in the bottle, and I gave it to Gran in her tea. Then you were the old man she saw in her dreams, said Will. But it wasn't in her dreams at all, was it? And it was you that stole the crown jewel. You brought it down with you. Hidden under his cloak, I said. Anything he hides under his cloak you can't see. He hid me twice, didn't you, Walter? I felt Will's grip on my shoulder loosen somewhat. He brought it back with him on the train. But I didn't know anything about it, not then. But why? Said Will. What for? For us, I said. Walter did it for us. See, he knows all about the farm, all about us being kicked out and having nowhere to go. I would not have you suffer as I once did, said Walter. I would not allow history to repeat itself. I see I must explain more. They took all that was mine, Master Will, and they called me a traitor and condemned me. God, it breaks my brain when I think on it, even now. I was betrayed by my own king, and worse, I was betrayed by those I thought were my friends. I would be avenged for the wrong they did me and the wrong that has been done to you. I was no traitor, Master Will, only a small part of what is owed to us. I've restored my family only a small part of what is owed to us. They have baubles and trinkets aplenty in the tower. They will not miss it. Faith, it is ours by right, Master Will. Why, the very gold and jewels you see before you might have come from Spanish treasure ship I myself captured. It was mine, I tell you, before it was ever the crown's, and 'twas wickedly taken from me, and have but to sell it, and my honour and our family's fortune is restored forever. I told him already it was too late, I said, that we've got to leave tomorrow. There are other farms, said Walter, and perchance we may find a better one. But you can't sell it, said Will, coming out from behind me at last. That's what I told him, I said. It's not right. It belongs to the Queen. I don't mean that, said Will. What I mean is no one would buy it, would they? I mean, it's like Father said. Everyone knows what it looks like, don't they? Everyone will be on the lookout for it. You can't hardly just walk into a jeweller in Exeter and say, what will you give me for this, and then plonk it down on the counter. And then he thought for a moment. Come to think of it, I suppose you could pick out the jewels and melt down the gold. You can't, I said. You wouldn't. I was horrified by the thought of destroying something so beautiful. They'd soon make another one. Just think. Bess only got to sell it and we could have any farm we wanted. Then he shook his head. But it's no good. We still couldn't sell the gold even if it was just a lump, nor the jewels. I mean, just supposing I tried, they'd still wonder where I got it from, wouldn't they? Wouldn't work. He's right, Walter, I said, and I held out the orb for Walter. He folded his arms resolutely. You've got to take it. You must. I said, a sudden panic rising inside me. How are we going to explain it if they find it in here? We'll all go to prison. Mother, father, everyone. You shouldn't have done it, Walter. It's not right to steal things. Just because someone else stole from you first doesn't make it right to steal it back. Walter looked down at me, his face darkened with anger. I had thought better of you, cousin. Do you dare to teach me right from wrong? I who have lived through a lifetime and I had hundreds of years to ponder on it. I who have shaped the history of the world. Have you so little faith in me? All I've ever done for you, and you pay me thus with insults. My honour is all I have left, and now you would steal that, even from me, and call me a thief. I see you love me not, cousin. Will hid behind me again as the onslaught continued, but the anger turned suddenly to hurt. In your service, cousin Bess, I have endeavoured much and accomplished little, it is true, but it's to spurn me is not generous. I didn't mean it like that, I said. You have no longer in any need of your friend Walter, he went on. I see I have disappointed you, and I would not stay where I am not wanted, so I bid you farewell. I bid you good night and farewell, and he was gone, vanishing through the door, leaving us both gaping after him, and me still holding the orb. Come back, Walter, please come back, I cried, but I knew he would not. I turned to Will. Now what are we going to do? I said. At that moment I heard a door open along the passage, and there were steps coming along towards my door, Father's footsteps. I leaped into bed quickly, clutching the orb to my stomach. Will switched off the light and hid behind the door. There was nowhere else to hide. The door opened. I squeezed my eyes closed and breathed deeply and regularly. Bess, you awake? Said Father. He waited for a moment and then shut the door behind him and went out. It's all right, dear, I heard him say as he went back into their room. I told you so. She's fast asleep. Don't go worrying yourself any more. I thought I heard voices, that's all, said Mother. Well, if you did, then she's been talking in her sleep again. I sat up and Will tiptoed over and sat on my bed. Close one, he said. We've got to get that thing out of the house, and quick, Bess, before someone finds it. We've got to hide it. What if Walter doesn't come back? I said. Then we'll be stuck with it, won't we? Either way, we've got to hide it. In the morning, I whispered, suddenly feeling very tired. Now, Will insisted. There'll be people all over the place in the morning. The removal men are coming at breakfast time, remember? We've got to get it out of the house, and now. If only he hadn't gone off, I said. He could have hidden it under his cloak. I shouldn't have said all those things. He was only doing his best. And when you think about it, I suppose he was right. I mean, he was only taking back what was his in the first place. And after all, he was only trying to help us, wasn't he? Maybe, said Will, but all he's done is drop us right in the muck. He paused for a moment. I've got it, he said, and he tried to stifle a chuckle. I've got it. I've got the perfect place. Come on, Bess, quick, and don't drop the orb. The floorboards creaked horribly as we crept down along the passage and down the stairs, but we made it to the front door. Hump slept in the kitchen, too close to the back door, so we couldn't go that way. The bolt was stiff and grated loudly as Will drew it back. The moon was so bright it was like daylight outside. I followed Will, who ran on ahead in striped pyjamas, crouching like a commando. My bare feet kept finding all the sharpest stones, so that it was difficult not to cry out with the pain of it. The night was strangely silent. No bleating of sheep, no cows browsing in the front meadow. "Here we are," Will whispered as we reached the orchard. "Where?" I said. "There," he said, pointing at the heap of horse dung against the hedgerow. "We'll hide it in there." "We can't," I said. "Why not? No one would ever think of looking there, would they?" "And you couldn't argue with that. We'll dig it up in the morning when we've decided what to do with it. Maybe by that time your friend will come back anyway and he can take it back to London where it belongs." He climbed up the dung heap with fencing stake in his hand and plunged it into the heap again and again until he made a deep hole. "That'll do," he said. "Give it here." And he took the orb out of my hand and lowered it gently down into the hole. "Come and give me a hand," he said. "We've got to fill it in." "I've got nothing on my feet," I said. "Nor have I," said Will. "It'll wash off." And so it did. When we finished burying the orb, we dunked our feet and hands in the water trough in the cow yard and dabbled them till they were clean again. "I've been thinking," said Will. "I've been thinking about the robbery. It said on the radio that nothing was broken, no glass, no nothing, no alarm set off. When you think about it, it's got to be a ghost. I mean, he just walked right through your bedroom door, didn't open it or anything, did he? It's what he must have done up there, walked right through the glass and took it. Brilliant. Magic. If I knew how to melt down gold and if we could sell it." "Will," I said firmly, "it's going back." "I know," Will said. "It's a pity, though. You could buy a fair-sized farm with £10 million, couldn't you? And a little left over for a graphite rod. They're the best. I've always wanted a graphite rod." "It's cold," I said, "and I'm going to bed." Back in my room, I coughed several times just in case Walter had come back, but he hadn't and he didn't. I wanted to say sorry. I wanted to find him again to make him understand, to explain what I'd meant. Two wrongs don't make a right. Gran had said it often enough, and now I understood what she meant for the first time, and she was right. But I hadn't meant to upset him like that. I slept in fits and starts, each time waking up and coughing to see if he was back, but dawn came and I was still alone. As I watched the sun come up over the trees beyond the front meadow, I knew it was for the last time. Tomorrow morning I'd be waking up at Auntie Ellie's, and all you could see from her windows were houses and lampposts and streets. I wasn't really sad though, not anymore. I knew we were going and that there was nothing anybody could do to stop it. I suppose I'd just become used to the idea. Anyway, I had more urgent things on my mind, like what the dickens we were going to do with the golden orb, and about how I was going to get my friend Walter back. Downstairs, I heard Mother talking out loud to Humph and putting him out. You could hear his tail banging against the door. A little later, I heard the sound of the removal van arriving. I didn't much want to be downstairs and watch everything being carried out, so I stayed where I was as long as I could. Besides, it was warm in bed, and I hated getting up anyway. Will and I didn't get a chance to talk before breakfast. He came down after me like he always did. He gave me a long, confidential look and winked at me. My brother Will loved conspiracy. In spite of the packing cases everywhere, it was an ordinary enough breakfast, except that Humph wasn't sitting unexpectedly under little Jim's high chair. I fed little Jim his cereal, the kind of puree porridge, scooping it off his chin and his cheek and shoveling it in again. Mother said Humph was outside begging the removal men's breakfast. Father was hitting the top of his boiled egg viciously. Vultures, that's what they are, always have been. "Who, dear?" Mother said. "Those Barrabill twins. It's just like they've been waiting all these years for us to go down the chute. Did you see what they bought yesterday? Did you? Almost all the pigs, couple of cows, and my favourite tractor, the little Macy 125. "Someone had to buy them, dear," said Mother. "Doesn't much matter who, does it?" "Sticks in my craw, that's all," Father went on. "They've lived across the valley from us for over 20 years, and in all that time there's never been anything but trouble. They never keep their fences up, their sheep wander everywhere, and the damage their pigs have done over the year doesn't bear thinking about. And did they ever pay a penny piece in compensation? Never. It was like getting blood out of a stone. Still, at least I got their money before they took them away yesterday. Cash, too. Paid me a good price for that dung, too," said Father, picking the shell off the edge of his boiled egg. We looked up at him. "Horse dung, you know, that heap in the orchard. Well, don't look so surprised. You didn't think I'd leave it behind, did you? Valuable stuff, that is, and we could hardly take it with us to Auntie Ellie's now, could we?" "When are they collecting it?" I asked. "Done it already. Came first thing this morning and loaded it right up. Said they were going to spread it right now while it's still dry. There's rain on the way, they said, needed it for their vegetable patch. Can we go out? Said Will, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. You haven't finished your breakfast, dear, said Mother. I don't feel like it, Will. Don't feel like it, said Will, do we? And he looked at me. No, I said, and I meant it. And we had gone out of the door before they could stop us, and running hard down towards the orchard. A flurry of rooks flew up as we opened the orchard gate, but one or two were still left busy in the worms where the horse dung heap had once been. There was no point in even looking, but we did it all the same, searching the ground again and again, just to be sure the unbelievable, terrible worst thing had really happened. It had. Now what? Said Will, kicking the clod of dung into the air. Well, at least no one will find it here now, I said. They won't be able to blame us, will they? And what happens when they find it in the dung? Said Will. I mean, you can't miss it, can you? Not a thing like that. They'll take it straight to the police, won't they? And they'll tell them where they got the dung from. That's what they do, and we'll be dropped right back in it. We've got to go after it and get it back before they find it. You have a wise brother, Cousin Bess, said a voice from behind us. My friend Walter was sitting on a tree stump, not 5 yards from us, smoking his pipe. I faith 'tis good advice, chick. He smiled at me. You see, I've recovered my good humour. I was always a too proud man for my own good, and perhaps endowed and too excitable in spirit. I only meant... But he held up his cane and stood up. Enough, sweet cousin, he said. I've reflected much through the night, and know now that you questioned more my wisdom than my honour, and my wisdom I have often questioned in myself. Come, cousin, and he held out his hands. Are we friends again? Of course, I said, and he bent and kissed me on the forehead. Master Will, he said, I see you are much like me, intemperate, injudicious. Will looked rather puzzled, but possessed of a fiery spirit that will not accept defeat. Come, we shall find this bauble if it's there, and when it's found, then indeed it will be left to you both to decide what to do with it. Are we agreed? We were. The quickest way to the Barrabills farm was across the river. We forded it together, knee-high in the water, holding hands to keep ourselves upright against the current. The stones were slippery underfoot, and I should have fallen more than once had my friend Walter not held me up. We clambered up through the woods, Will running ahead to hurry us along. We stumbled over a ploughed field that last skirted the hedgerow. We ran into the house. And at last skirted the hedgerow that ran to the house. I'd been there once or twice in the car with Mother to deliver the parish magazines. You could smell the dung already. The vegetable garden was to one side of the house, and we could not see it. We could only just see the garden fence from where we were. A tractor and trailer were parked near the front gate, and the trailer was quite empty. They've spread it already, said Will, stating the obvious. We wasted a few moments debating if it was safe to search the front garden. The horrible Barrabills did not like trespassers and did not like children. We knew that well enough from past experience. What are we going to say to them if they catch us? Said Will. We can't hardly tell them what we're looking for, can we? Master Will, said Walter. Perchance you have forgotten that I may go unseen where I will. They shall not see me unless I wish it. I pray you rest here while I watch. A while and watch. If I find the bauble, I shall bring it back to you, and you can be sure of it. And he walked out across the yard, limping and leaning heavily on his cane. Why does he limp? Will asked. He told me he was wounded in the leg when he was capturing Cadiz from the Spanish, I said. And he was too. I read it in a book I've got. He's got a wooden splinter in it when a cannonball hit his ship. We saw him open the gate and then walk up and down the vegetable garden, prodding at the dung with his cane. Once in a while he'd stop and bend down, so that he all but disappeared from our view, but when he stood up again, he would shake his head in our direction. But it's got to be there, Will said, biting on his wrist. It's got to be. Perhaps they found it already, I said. It was almost as though Walter heard me, because he suddenly stopped in his tracks and looked towards the house as if he'd heard something. Only one small window looked out on the vegetable garden. Walter walked over to it and peered in. He rubbed the window and then looked again, his face against the glass. He was waving his cane to us and beckoning us over. We left the cover of the hedge and ran low across the yard and into the vegetable garden, a trio of hens scurrying away as we came. I followed the slipping and slithering of the horse dung that clung to the bottom of my Wellingtons. Walter was pointing at the window, his finger to his lips. We rose from below the window slowly until our eyes were over the windowsill and we could see everything. The horrible Barrabills had their backs to us. They were standing by the kitchen sink and the tap was running. They were washing something, and it wasn't their hands. We could only catch a glimpse of it. but it was golden and it was round, and they were washing it carefully, very carefully indeed. Ooh, okay. Back for chapter 9 on Monday. See you then. Bye-bye.